Hello and welcome. I'm Lorianne Lumby with Authentic Freedom Academy, and today is Friday, May 8th, and we are here for our weekly spiritual service. And before we dive into the content for today's session, let's take a few moments and bring ourselves into this space to arrive at a place of relaxation, mindfulness, and centered calm. So I invite you to begin by closing your eyes. And I'm really feeling a deep call for groundedness. So I invite you to draw your awareness immediately to the base of your spine and to feel that connection between your seat, the back of your legs, your lower back, and the chair or the couch on which you're sitting. To feel that touch. To feel that sense of being held, of being supported, holding your attention at that space of connection. Allowing yourself to really sink into that sensation and feeling of being supported. And feeling that energy of support drawing deep into the earth. Imagine your own energy reaching deep into the earth like roots of a tree. And feeling that sense of being anchored, of really being intimately connected with and held by Mother Earth. Sinking your own roots as deep as you can imagine them reaching into the earth. And if you can picture in the center of the earth a bright star-like crystal that is the energy center of the earth, and envisioning your own roots reaching and reaching around that earth energy center. Feeling that sense of being held securely and safely on this planet. And we'll pause for a few moments in silence as you continue to enjoy, experience, and appreciate that sense of being held. From that place of groundedness, I invite you to listen and receive these words from the book of Exodus. Having set out from Elim, the whole Israelite community came into the desert of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 50th day of the second month after their departure from the land of Egypt. Here in the desert, the whole Israelite community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The Israelites said to them, "Would that we had died at the Lord's hand in the land of Egypt, as we sat by our flesh pots and ate our fill of bread. But you had to into this desert to make the whole community die of famine." Then Moses said to Aaron, "Tell the whole Israelite community, present yourselves before the Lord, for he has heard your grumbling." When Aaron announced this to the whole Israelite community, they turned toward the desert, and lo, the glory of the Lord appeared in the cloud. The Lord spoke to Moses and said, "I have heard the grumbling of the Israelites. Tell them, in the evening twilight you shall eat flesh, and in the morning you shall have your fill of bread, so that you may know that I, the Lord, am your God." In the evening, quail came up and covered the camp. In the morning, a dew lay all about the camp, and when the dew evaporated, there on the surface of the desert were fine flakes like hoarfrost on the ground. On seeing this, the Israelites asked one another, "What is this?" For they did not know what it was. But Moses told them, "This is the bread which the Lord has given you to eat." As I mentioned in the opening statements before officially beginning the session today, this has been, at least to me, one of, I would say, the worst week yet as it relates to the COVID-19, I don't know, event, experience, crisis, pandemic, whatever word we want to use for that. And it's just been a difficult week as an empath, feeling what's going on in the world. And as had come up in some of the discussion earlier, there's just our own things to process, let alone whatever is happening in the world. And I know one of the things that I'm aware of, and which came up in the discussion, is old things that we thought we were done with. And we are in a retrograde period, and I think, I'm not an astrologer, but I think pretty much every planet is in retrograde right now, Pluto especially. And during retrograde times, especially when Pluto is involved, it is the time for flashbacks and revisiting old wounds, old pain, old traumas. And so that's been a big theme this week, within myself and among the people that I'm in contact with, and also in addition to the chaos that's going on in the world. And specifically, I had to turn off Facebook and take really just a 2-day be by myself, cleanse, support myself kind of day, because Facebook has become so toxic. And it's fighting and conflict and everybody grumbling. And there's a rhyme and a reason to that, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But as I was sitting in meditation this morning and trying to decide if I was going to have this gathering today or not, this story of the Israelites came into my awareness, and I'm like, oh, that's where we are. Oh, that's where we're going. Okay, I get it. So we don't get, well, at least in the Catholic upbringing in which I was raised, the full Israelite story is never really told. We get glimpses of it and we hear different readings about this and that. The parting of the Red Sea or the Reed Sea, we get the story of the plagues, we get Moses being put in a basket in the water, and so we get these tidbits of information. But what I never experienced until probably a few years ago when I was really moving through more of the text in the Genesis or the Exodus story, is that this story is really the perfect example of the hero's journey. And it is the quintessential examination of human nature and how human beings are, both when they're given something really good and when they're given something really good. So to kind of summarize the story, here's the Israelites that are in the beginning of the story enslaved in Egypt. They are serving the egoic goals and purpose of the Pharaoh. They're building his temples, they're building his pyramids, if we believe Cecil B. DeMille's interpretation of the story. And they're doing everything for the Pharaoh and doing so as the Pharaoh's slaves and living a poverty-like, subsistent existence as slaves. Moses has some sort of awakening and hears about this promised land in a voice from a burning bush. It says, hey, I'm here to help you guys get out of this situation. Let's get out of slavery and move into freedom. Cool, that sounds like a great idea. Let's be free. Let's leave our oppressors behind. Let's leave this life of imprisonment. But therein lies the challenge. In order to pursue the path of freedom, the Israelites had to leave behind what they knew. They had to leave behind what was familiar. While they may have been enslaved, they were being fed. They knew what their days would look like. They knew what their time would look like. They knew what their routine would be. They were together with family and friends, and they were enslaved, but it was familiar. It was known. In order to be free, in order to pursue freedom, they had to leave that behind. They had to leave behind what they knew and step out into something they had no idea what. And as they very quickly discovered, Moses didn't have a plan or a map. He was going strictly on his gut, or as what he called his divine guidance. If we believe the fantastical description of how God led them through the desert, there was a column of smoke and a pillar of fire, and they were being led. And I often wonder if it was really just Moses that saw that, or Moses and Aaron, or Moses, Aaron, and Miriam. She doesn't get any credit. She should get a lot more than she does. And here they are. They those that had the courage to leave did. Not everybody left. That's another thing that we never hear, is that there were probably thousands of Israelites that decided to stay in Egypt and didn't go in pursuit of freedom, did not go in pursuit of the promised land. Those that did go in pursuit, that did follow Moses, wandered around in the desert for 40 years. So in the story, they cross the Red Sea, they're on their way to freedom, they're away from the Egyptians, and what do? They start bitching and moaning. So first they complain because there's no water. So Moses takes his staff, taps a rock, and a spring comes forth. Moses was probably a douser, or Miriam was. Then they grumbled about food. So quail came, so they had flesh to eat. In the morning, something appeared on the ground, which we don't know what that is. I guess I don't know what they would be. Scientists have proposed it was perhaps locusts. But something appeared on the ground that they could eat. And that was their bread. And eventually, they grew tired of the bread and the quail and started bitching about that. And then they started complaining because their God wasn't proximate enough to them. So they built the golden calf, and then they got in trouble for building the golden calf. And then they complained because they didn't like the laws that God handed down to them. And then they were given more gifts, and then they complained about that. So it's this ongoing story of, here's your path to freedom, but I guess you're going to get there bitching and moaning all the way. And isn't that human nature? And isn't that what we're dealing with COVID-19? When I look at this experience through my big lens, I know and trust that this COVID-19 experience is part of the death of the old world and creating the threshold that we can cross to move into a new world. It is giving us the opportunity as a species to make different decisions and to create a freer, more loving, more compassionate world for ourselves. I believe that this is our parting of the Red Sea, if you will. But like the Israelites, we haven't been given a map. We haven't been given a plan. There's no itinerary or agenda. And as much as we think we know things, we really don't know anything. And so here's this profound opportunity to create a new world for ourselves. And yet, human beings' very real reaction to the unknown is coming forth. Bitching, moaning, complaining, grumbling, arguing and fighting, grasping after a need to know. And if we don't have knowledge, we'll make it up. Grasping after some measure of control, which ultimately, in the face of this, we have no control. As soon as knowledge comes forth, that knowledge is refuted, or we, instead of getting answers, we get more questions. And we're in this for the long haul. You know, we're going to be in the desert for 40 years, probably not 40, but at least until next fall. I mean, fall of 2021 is what I keep hearing, is that it's going to be that long before we're really out of this. And what does out of this even mean? We don't know. And it might be it might not be until the fall of 2021 that we start to get a glimpse of what could our new world look like. What might we be moving toward? What can we start to create? Like right now, I'm not sure we can create much because we're just freaking trying to survive. And for me personally, I have people that I dearly love that are on both sides of this conversation, not fighting with each other, but fighting with the collective against each other over their opinions. Wear a mask, don't wear a mask, stay closed, let's open. You know, it's so polarized and polarizing, and everybody has their opinion, but we ultimately don't know anything. So it's grasping at straws, it's throwing noodles against the wall, hoping something's going to stick. But at the end of the day, we really don't know. And one of the things that I have kept hearing in this from, I'm just going to say one side of the argument, is this idea that we're losing freedoms. And I've been sitting with that question, and the image that came through for me is that a caterpillar doesn't become a butterfly without losing its perceived freedom to live in the constriction of the cocoon. And oftentimes, the price of greater freedom is temporary restriction. And that's something that, I guess I'll say, the American lie makes us think that we deserve all of these liberties and freedoms, but at what cost? If our liberties are imposing upon the common good, then it's not a liberty anymore. If we can't give ourselves a moment to stop and be quiet and be still and ensure the well-being and safety of other people, then that's not freedom. If we can't allow ourselves to do that. And we are at a place in this process where, yeah, it's inconvenient. Nobody wants to be stuck in their home. Nobody wants to be unable to do the things that they were comfortable and familiar with doing. Nobody wants to lose those quote unquote freedoms. But in order to have the greater freedom, we have to have that chrysalis and cocoon time. And it's my belief that my belief is that this is where we're at. Is, yeah, it's uncomfortable inside the chrysalis. Yeah, it feels a little tight and restraining. But it's a necessary part of the transformation before we can move into that greater freedom where we can move from crawling to flying. And that's my invitation for us today, is to look at that invitation to temporary restrictions as an opportunity to enter into our own chrysalis and cocoon, to collectively enter into our own chrysalis, so that what is not life-giving in our human experience can be transformed and recreated into something that brings forth new life. And this is why we're here. And in that cocoon, doing what we need to do to support our own individual transformation. Allowing the wounds of our past to come forward to be revisited and another layer to be healed. To allow grief to come forward and to be released. To allow frustration and anger to inform us. To let it remind us of what's life-giving and what's not. To remind us of what we're being invited to release and let go of, or to throw in the fire of transformation. In that cocoon time, our self-care is critical. And in being that cocoon for ourselves, we are also being cocooned for others. So that is our invitation. To be aware of our human nature and the grumbling and complaining that will surface, but more importantly, to allow ourselves to experience this temporary restriction for the sake of a greater freedom. So I invite us to take a few moments in quiet as we allow that to settle into us, to receive that message and to see what stirs forth in us related to that. And if you need to get up and walk around, feel free to do that. And we'll join back in the circle about 5-10 minutes, or probably 5 minutes, to share whatever came through for us. Thank you for all those who were able to join today, either live and able to participate in the discussion and the conversation, or if you are just here virtually and listening to the recorded aspect of our gathering. Just as a reminder, we are the Israelites in the desert, and we are moving towards a new world for ourselves, moving towards the opportunity to create something new. And we are doing so without a map or a plan or an agenda, and oftentimes without proper information or any information. So the more that we can be accepting of that unknown, the more that we can be at peace with not knowing, the more we can let go of our need to be right or our need to be in control, the more we can surrender to the natural movement of this process, the more we will find peace within ourselves and in our everyday lives as a result of that. And with that is also some invitation for me to be compassionate and understanding of the grumblings, as these are normal human reactions to not being in control. And to really just hold everything loosely. If we can enter into this with innocent eyes, from a state of wonder, or if not wonder, at least curiosity. Like, how are human beings going to do this thing? And see how that plays out. So I invite us to just close our eyes for a moment. Just take a moment and reconnect with yourself. You want to return to that awareness of being supported and held, to feel that sense of security and safety. And within your own mind, to offer yourself gratitude and appreciation for giving yourself this time to receive support, inspiration, guidance, and connection, as together we find our way to the forest of the unknown. So I thank you for your energy, your attention, your intention, and send us all off with a blessing of namaste and big love, big hugs. Have a great weekend.